The woman was yelling before the cuffs even touched her wrists. "I am the HOA board!" she shrieked, as the officer gently pushed her face down onto her front lawn. Two squad cars idled on the curb, red and blue lights flashing silently against rows of tidy townhouses. Neighbors peeked from windows. A teenager filmed the whole thing from across the street, camera shaking with laughter. A few feet away, the very same police car she had ordered, towed from a private HOA-only parking space, sat exactly where she had tried to have it dragged away. No tow truck, no victory. Just a woman in garden gloves being zip-tied by the same officer she had tried to get rid of. And the craziest part? She still didn't know he lived there. That, of course, was only the beginning. It all started weeks earlier, on the kind of sunny, slow morning that made the world feel like it was finally turning right side up again. That day, I'd just moved into my new place. It wasn't anything fancy, just a modest two-bedroom townhome in a gated community tucked outside of Phoenix, Arizona. It had one big oak tree out front, a narrow driveway, and a front porch that creaked whenever the wind blew. For someone like me, a 27-year-old single guy who'd spent the past few years living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment behind a mechanic's shop, it felt like a castle. I was still unpacking my kitchenware when I heard the knock. It wasn't polite. It was the kind of knock that came from someone who had never heard the word boundaries. Standing outside my front door was a tall, wiry woman in her late 50s, short, gray, blonde bob, thick-framed sunglasses. She held a clipboard like it was a weapon. "You just moved in?" she asked, not even offering a smile. I nodded. "Yep, yesterday. Still settling in." She pointed to a sticker on my mailbox. "That's not regulation." I blinked. "It came with the house." She didn't care. "Well, we don't allow non-approved labels. You'll need to replace it by Friday. I'm Claire. I'm the HOA president." I should have known then what I was dealing with. But I was still naive, still believing that if you're kind to people, they'll be kind in return. "Thanks for the heads up," I said. "I'll take care of it." Claire nodded, turned sharply on her heel, and marched off, clipboard tucked tight to her chest. I watched her go, already wondering if I'd made a mistake. For the first couple weeks, things were quiet. I didn't make much noise, didn't throw any parties, and I followed the rules. Paid my HOA dues on time, kept my lawn trimmed, even took in the trash bins of the elderly man across the street, Mr. Baines, without ever being asked. But Claire? She had a sixth sense for other people's business. She'd patrol the neighborhood every morning with her clipboard, jotting down infractions like grass 1 inch too high, or car parked slightly over the line. I tried to stay out of her way. I really did. Then, one evening, something happened that put me on her radar for good. It was a Wednesday. I'd just come home from work. I'm a night shift nurse, so my hours are all over the place. I pulled into my driveway around 9 p.m., exhausted, but something caught my eye. An older sedan was parked in the HOA visitor space just down from my unit. Nothing unusual, except the driver had left the hazard lights on. I walked past it, heading toward my front door, when I saw someone step out from behind the tree near the lot. It was Claire. She had her phone out, pointed at the car. "Is this yours?" she barked. I shook my head. "Nope. Just got here." She didn't say anything, just scowled and started dialing. The next morning, I found a flyer taped to the driver's window of my car, some bogus warning about reverse parking. And later that day, I noticed something even weirder. Claire had installed a small camera near the HOA signpost, aimed at the visitor parking spots. Things escalated from there. One neighbor, Tricia, told me Claire had once called the police on a teenage boy for skateboarding too close to her yard. Another, Sam, said Claire had written him up for aggressively closing his car door too loudly at 7 a.m. And just when I thought I'd seen it all, came the day everything blew wide open. It was a bright Saturday morning. I was sweeping off my front porch when I heard the unmistakable beep-beep of a tow truck. I looked down the street, and there it was, slowly backing into the visitor lot. Behind it stood Claire, looking victorious. The truck was lining up to hook onto a black Ford Interceptor, a retired police cruiser that one of our neighbors, Jordan, had converted into his personal vehicle. Claire was waving her hands and yelling instructions. The driver didn't look convinced. Then, just as the hook clanged under the car door, Jordan came jogging out of his house. Now, Jordan's the quiet type. Big guy, late 30s, always in gym shorts and a plain t-shirt. I'd barely spoken to him before that moment. But what happened next? I'll never forget it. Jordan walked straight up to the tow driver, calmly pulled out a badge from his wallet, and said something low I couldn't hear. The tow guy's face changed in an instant. He backed off, unhooked the car, and practically ran back into his truck. Claire looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "I want it removed," she snapped. "This is private HOA property." Jordan didn't yell. He didn't even raise his voice. He just said, "Ma'am, I live here. You are interfering with an officer's vehicle. If you don't step back, I will have to call this in." Claire looked ready to explode, but the real fireworks came 2 days later. Jordan had parked in that same visitor spot again, this time with a fresh city-issued permission sticker on the windshield. Claire? She wasn't done. At exactly 7:45 a.m., I saw her standing on the sidewalk, phone in hand, again calling a tow service. Only this time, Jordan had company. 2 uniformed officers were inside his unit, and when they saw what was happening outside, they came walking out, straight toward Claire. She didn't know who they were. She didn't even see the backup officer reaching for his cuffs. "Ma'am," one of them said, "put the phone down." Claire turned around, still yelling. "This is my neighborhood," she screamed. "That car is violating community code." And then it happened. The officer gave her one last warning. She refused. She lunged toward the patrol car with a piece of paper in her hand, some printout of a fake HOA code violation. That's when she got cuffed, right there, on her perfect lawn, next to her pink rose bushes and her little HOA board proud sign. Neighbors came out. Someone gasped. Someone else cheered. The same teenage boy she once called the police on filmed the whole thing, whispering, "This is insane." But Claire didn't go quietly. As they led her to the squad car, she yelled, "You'll regret this. I own this street." But she didn't. And she still didn't know the truth about Jordan. Not yet. Not the real truth. And that's where things really started to unravel. The next morning, Claire's house looked like it had been frozen in time. The porch light was still on, even though the sun was high in the sky. Her newspaper sat untouched on the step. The little flag that usually hung proudly from her mailbox now drooped like a scolded child. She wasn't out doing her usual patrol. No clipboard, no glare, nothing. Word had already spread through the neighborhood. Claire had been arrested, not ticketed, not warned, arrested. People whispered about it on their porches, in driveways, in hushed tones at the community pool. Some were shocked, others were delighted. A few were pretending to be shocked and delighted. But me? I couldn't stop thinking about the look on Jordan's face. Not smug, not angry, just tired, like a man who'd been holding his breath for too long. By lunchtime, a new paper flyer appeared on every door. It was from the HOA board. A printed message, clearly Claire's doing, probably scheduled before her takedown. Due to an unfortunate misunderstanding, it read, "Our president will be taking a brief leave of absence. All concerns can be directed to temporary Vice President Marcia Ellis." Marcia was Claire's best friend, a smaller version of her with red-tinted hair and a passive-aggressive smile. She wasn't as bold, but she still watched everyone like a hawk in reading glasses. Meanwhile, Claire hadn't come back. Her house stayed shut for 3 days. No cars, no movement. And during that time, something odd happened. People started talking to each other again. I mean really talking. Trisha invited neighbors over for lemonade in her yard. Sam grilled burgers and passed out extra plates. Even Mr. Baines, who rarely spoke more than a sentence, sat out on his porch and told a story about when he first bought his house back in the 80s. There was this weird calm, like the whole community had exhaled. And that's when Jordan and I finally had a real conversation. I saw him one morning jogging up the block. Same gym shorts, same plain t-shirt. I was out front watering my little rose bush when he paused and gave me a nod. "Hey," he said. "Appreciate you not getting involved with all that mess the other day." I shrugged. Didn't seem like my fight. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, well, for what it's worth, thanks." We talked for a while after that. Turned out, Jordan wasn't just some quiet neighbor with a retired police cruiser. He was still active duty, undercover narcotics, kept things quiet for safety, especially since he'd done work in nearby neighborhoods. "She had no clue," he said, shaking his head. "She was trying to tow a cop car. That's a first, even for me." I laughed, but Jordan didn't. He looked toward Claire's house and said, "People like her don't stop, they shift." He was right. Because by the end of the week, Claire was back. Not with a bang, but with a smile. The creepy kind. She waved at people like nothing happened, trimmed her bushes, wore a t-shirt that said, "Misunderstood, not wrong." And she started writing again, quietly. Warnings reappeared. Notices for things like excessive bird feeders or decorations beyond the seasonal limit. She wasn't president anymore, technically, but she had influence. You could feel it, like a cold draft under a locked door. That's when it got worse. She began targeting Jordan in smaller ways, not through obvious confrontation, but through whispers, quiet suggestions at community meetings. "We should really reconsider letting retired vehicles park so close to the clubhouse. Maybe we need stricter ID checks for residents. For safety." And Marcia? She echoed every word like a backup singer in a shady band. Jordan didn't react, not openly. He parked where he was supposed to. He waved politely. But something was building in him, slow and steady, like a storm you see coming from miles away. The next community meeting was where it exploded. It was held at the clubhouse on a Thursday night. Normally, about 10 people showed up. This time, there were 30. Claire sat in the back row, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Marcia stood up front, droning through old business. Then came new business. That's when Tricia raised her hand. "I think we should talk about what happened with Claire last week," she said. Marcia blinked. "That matter is considered closed." "It wasn't closed when she was calling tow trucks on people," Tricia shot back. "We deserve to know what happened, and why it was allowed." Claire stood up slowly like a queen rising from her throne. "I was enforcing the rules," she said. "If a vehicle is in violation, it must be removed. I didn't know—" Jordan raised a hand. "Can I speak?" he asked, calm as ever. Everyone turned. "I've lived here for 2 years," he said. "I've paid my dues. I've followed the rules. I've kept to myself. And I've also worn a badge longer than some of you have had front lawns." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a laminated ID. Detective Jordan Kane, City of Phoenix Police Department. You could hear a pin drop. Claire's face drained, pale, stiff. She looked around like the walls were closing in. "I didn't realize," she began. "That's the point," Jordan said. "You didn't ask. You didn't care. You just assumed, and you acted like you were above the law." Silence. Then a slow, awkward clap from the back. More claps joined in. Claire sat down, red-faced and stone-quiet. But the tension didn't end there. Because the next day, Claire doubled down. She called a private security company, hired them to patrol problem areas. No one knew who gave her the authority. But the trucks came anyway. White SUVs with yellow decals, and that's when the next extreme thing happened, because one of those trucks tried to pull Jordan over in front of his own house, on a public street. And what happened next changed everything. The security truck's lights flashed red and amber, cheap plastic domes spinning on top like something out of a theme park ride. Jordan had just pulled into his driveway, stepping out of his car with a bag of groceries in one hand and a bottle of orange juice in the other. He froze for a second, not out of fear, but more like disbelief. The truck idled at the edge of his lawn. A young man in a tight black uniform stepped out, chest puffed, clipboard in hand. No badge, no authority, just confidence built on the lies someone had sold him. "You can't park here, sir," the security guy said. Jordan placed his groceries gently on the hood of his car. "This is my driveway," he replied, voice flat. "I have orders," the guy said, tapping the clipboard. "This is a patrol violation area now. Residents must use designated rear lots." Jordan tilted his head. "Who gave you those orders?" The guy hesitated. "The HOA board." Jordan took a step forward. Just one. "There is no rule like that in our bylaws, and you don't have jurisdiction here. You're not law enforcement." The young man swallowed, eyes flicking toward the clipboard again like it would save him. But Jordan didn't move any further. He just pointed toward the end of the street. "You can turn your little lights off and leave, or you can wait here and explain your fake orders to the real police. Your call." The man didn't wait for a second offer. He muttered something, climbed back into the truck, and drove off without even turning around. Word spread fast. Someone posted it on the neighborhood message board. Someone else uploaded the Ring camera footage. People were watching now. Claire had made her move, and it was sloppy. 2 days later, an emergency HOA meeting was announced. Marcia tried to pass it off as routine, but no one bought it. The turnout doubled again. This time Jordan wasn't even in the room yet when Claire stood up. "I want to clear the air," she said loudly, chin up like she was accepting a medal. "There's been a lot of misinformation. I never intended for private security to cause any distress. I only wanted to restore order." That was her thing. Order. It was always about order. Tricia stood up. "You mean you hired mall cops to harass your neighbors?" Marcia banged a gavel like she was on daytime TV. "Let's remain respectful." Sam leaned forward. "Claire, just be honest. You called them to mess with Jordan. We all know it." Claire's lip curled. "I called them because we have people parking illegally. Because we have people coming and going at all hours. Because this neighborhood is not safe anymore." Jordan walked in then, right on cue. He stood near the back wall, arms crossed, silent. Claire pointed at him. "And he brings cop cars here to intimidate us." That was it. The whole room groaned. Jordan stepped forward slowly, took the mic from Marcia's shaky hands and said, "I live here. I've lived here quietly, respectfully. I've helped neighbors in ways you'll never know. But you, Claire, you used your title to wage a personal war." The room was dead silent again. "2 nights ago," Jordan continued, "a security truck tried to stop me on my own property. That's not just harassment, it's unlawful." Claire looked around for support, but this time, even Marcia wouldn't meet her eye. "I'm filing a report," Jordan said. "Not just with the HOA board, with the city. I've already spoken with a housing attorney. You crossed a line." And then he said the one thing no one expected. "But I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to protect the people who live here, even from each other." With that, he handed the mic back and walked out. No one clapped, no one spoke. Even Claire sat down. But the next morning, something unthinkable happened. Claire's mailbox was smashed in, her rose bushes, torn out by the roots, and stuck to her front door with masking tape, was a single sheet of paper. It was Jordan's police ID photo, printed in black and white, with the word "traitor" scrawled across the top. The neighborhood had shifted. And Claire? She wasn't done fighting. Because that afternoon, she went down to City Hall, filed a complaint against Jordan, claimed he'd been impersonating an officer. It was petty, it was baseless, but it triggered something. An internal review was opened. Jordan's badge was suspended, temporarily, until the matter was resolved. That was her win, her opening, her way to get back on top. And she made the mistake of celebrating too early, because just 4 days later, Jordan's car appeared in the visitor lot again, Same black cruiser, same spot, no badge this time, no uniform, just him, sitting on the hood, drinking a soda like it was any other day. And that's when Claire made the biggest mistake of all. She called a tow truck again, had the car hooked and hauled, waved smugly from her porch as it rolled away. She never even noticed the unmarked SUV parked across the street, didn't see the plainclothes officer taking notes, didn't hear the call being logged at dispatch. And when that officer came back the next morning, he wasn't alone. 2 cruisers, full gear, body cams on. They walked right up to Claire's door, knocked twice, and when she opened it, they served her with a warrant. And that's when it happened. Again. Handcuffs, lawn, neighbors. But this time, there was video. And what they found inside her house changed everything.
The officers didn't even raise their voices. They simply told Claire to step outside, and when she hesitated, one of them calmly said, "Ma'am, this is a warrant issued by the city based on multiple counts of harassment, false reports, and abuse of community authority. We need you to come with us." She screamed, of course. Claimed it was all a setup. Claimed Jordan had forged the warrant, that it was retaliation for her doing her duty. But it didn't matter. The officers cuffed her on her front lawn, again, but this time, they weren't gentle. She kicked. She wailed. She even tried to bite. One of her slippers flew off and landed in her rose bushes. The entire neighborhood came outside. Cameras were already rolling. Kids were whispering excitedly. It was surreal. A woman who had spent the better part of her life trying to control everyone else's had now become the main character in the very drama she used to create. They took her away in the back of a cruiser. No hand waves this time. No fake dignity. And that's when it got even worse for her. Because while Claire sat in holding, investigators went through her house with quiet precision. She had no clue what was about to surface. But we were about to find out. It started with files, paper ones. Stacks and stacks of printed out emails, photographs, and notes, all catalogued with names and house numbers. There were even maps with red marker circles on homes she had labeled as problem residents. One envelope held private photos of Trisha's kids playing in the yard, taken from a distance. Another had screenshots of Jordan's old social media posts and copies of his license plate records, stuff that only someone going out of their way to stalk could collect. It was more than just nosy. It was obsessive. She had lists, too. A compliance hit list, marked with checkboxes. Jordan, black check mark emoji. Sam, black check mark emoji. Trisha, black check mark emoji. New guy from Unit 7, black check mark emoji. Baines, waiting. One officer pulled out a tablet she'd kept hidden in a drawer. Password protected. Locked down. But it didn't take long for digital forensics to crack it open. What they found? An app that connected to 4 wireless home cameras, none of which were installed in her own home. One had a view of the clubhouse parking lot. Another showed a backyard across the street. A third one? A camera buried discreetly in the birdhouse, angled directly at the walking path where kids often rode their bikes. The last one was the most disturbing. It was hidden inside a solar garden light placed near Jordan's back gate. No one could believe it. Not even the HOA board members she used to control. Everyone was stunned. Marcia cried during questioning, swearing she had no idea things had gotten that dark. The news spread like wildfire. Claire was being investigated for invasion of privacy, harassment of minors, and illegal surveillance. The HOA board launched an emergency vote to permanently strip her of any position, even as a volunteer. But here's the twist no one saw coming. The investigator assigned to the case? A woman named Detective Raina Coles. And she used to live here. 4 years ago, Claire had reported Raina's teenage son for reckless skateboarding on the sidewalk. The kid had nearly been expelled after the report got blown out of proportion, until Raina fought it, proved it was bogus, and moved her family to a different neighborhood. "I didn't forget her," Raina told Jordan during the follow-up. "I told myself one day, if I ever got the chance, I'd make it right." And now she was the one leading the investigation. Justice, as they say, has a long memory. But just as things seemed to be settling, just as the community was starting to believe maybe the worst was behind them, something happened that no one expected. Claire got bail. She walked out of county holding with sunglasses on her face and a smirk on her lips. And she didn't go home. She went directly to the HOA office. With a lawyer. and filed a lawsuit. Against the HOA board. Against the city. Against Jordan. Claimed wrongful arrest. Claimed public defamation. Claimed her rights had been violated. The nerve of it sent shockwaves down every street in the neighborhood. People were furious. How can she still come back here? Doesn't she feel any shame? But the legal system doesn't move with public opinion. It moves with paperwork. And Claire had just enough money and just enough legal tricks to keep the case alive. The neighborhood tensed again. People stopped holding barbecues. Sidewalk chats became short and stiff. It was like her presence had sucked the oxygen out of everything again. But Jordan? He didn't sit still. He started gathering every record, every statement, every neighbor willing to testify. And quietly, something beautiful began to grow. A group of residents formed a committee, not just to fight Claire, but to change the rules. To rework the HOA charter. To take back control from the few who had used it as a weapon. They met in backyards. In garages. In driveways under string lights and plastic lawn chairs. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about healing. Mr. Baines, old and slow-moving, brought cookies. Tricia started a community newsletter. Sam built a website that let people report violations with context, no more anonymous ambushes. And me? I started filming everything. Documenting the changes. The pain. The progress. It was inspiring. But just when things were finally turning a corner, Claire showed up again. This time, with a reporter from a local news station. They walked up and down the neighborhood, recording her dramatic retelling of events. She's framing herself as a victim, Sam told us that night, staring at the TV. Look at this, she's got the meeting out of her hand. The next day, our community was splashed across headlines. And someone vandalized Jordan's garage door with red spray paint. One word. Claire. And this time? There were no cameras that caught the act. Only suspicion. Only fear. And Jordan? He didn't say a word. But his eyes told a different story. Something was coming. Something big. And none of us were ready. By the following week, everything had shifted. Again. Jordan's garage door had been repainted, but the shadow of that red spray paint still hung over the block like a thundercloud. Nobody said it out loud, but we all felt it. Claire wasn't just fighting to clear her name anymore, she was fighting to reclaim control. To make the neighborhood bend to her all over again. What made it worse? The reporter she brought in did a full segment. Called her a misunderstood community leader caught in a legal gray zone. It aired on the local station and went viral in our state's HOA circles. The comments were brutal. People who didn't know a single thing about our community were defending her, calling Jordan a bully, accusing the neighborhood of ganging up on an innocent older woman. It was infuriating. But Jordan didn't flinch. Instead, he invited Raina Coles back to speak at a new town hall meeting, one we streamed online for transparency. She laid everything out, the surveillance evidence, the false complaints, the long paper trail of manipulative behavior that had targeted not just adults but children too. And she ended with this. Power in an HOA isn't meant to be absolute. It's meant to serve. When someone abuses that power, it's not just a violation of trust, it's a danger to every person who lives here. Applause followed. Loud, emotional, defiant. Claire wasn't in the room this time, but her lawyer was, and he didn't clap. That night, things got quiet again. Like the air itself was waiting for something. It came the next morning. Jordan's cruiser, his personal car, was gone. Not towed. Not moved. Gone. No glass. No broken parts. Just vanished. The same neighbor kid who always filmed stuff? He'd caught a shadowy figure with a flashlight around 3:14 a.m. Two figures, actually. One held something like a car remote. The other kept watch near the back gate. The footage was blurry, grainy. Not enough to make out faces. But enough to prove it wasn't random. The police came. Again. But this time, they didn't just write a report. They launched a full investigation. They searched Claire's home again, this time with digital forensic dogs. They traced traffic from her router and found something chilling, late-night activity pinging off stolen police scanner channels and dark web forums for vehicle overrides. She wasn't working alone. She had help. And it wasn't just about towing a car anymore. It was about revenge. Control. But when they brought Claire in again, she played it calm. Cool. Wore pearls. wore her HOA proud cardigan, smiled through the whole interview. "I'm being persecuted," she said. "You people just don't like a strong woman who enforces the rules." But behind the scenes, her tone was very different. She'd hired a private investigator. She'd pulled property records, past employment files, and personal details on over 15 residents. She had dirt on marriages, bankruptcies, even medical issues. All stacked in folders in a locked drawer under her stairs. Claire wasn't just trying to win, she was preparing for war. And still, Jordan didn't fight her the way she expected. He didn't blast her online. He didn't retaliate. Instead, he launched the New Roots Project. It was simple, a proposal to restructure the HOA bylaws from the ground up. Fairer rules. Community-driven votes. Transparency clauses. Term limits for board members. Mental health screenings for board eligibility. People rallied behind it like wildfire. We had meetings on Saturdays with coffee and folding chairs. We took shifts calling residents who couldn't attend. We got signatures. Dozens. Then hundreds. Enough to force a legal vote. Claire tried to block it, claimed it was illegal, that the petitions were fake, that we were brainwashed by radical HOA reformists. But the city attorney backed us. The vote would happen. Fair and square. And Claire? She made one last desperate move. The day before the vote, a new incident happened. Jordan's house, his actual home, was broken into. But not for robbery. Nothing was taken. Instead, someone smeared black paint across his living room wall, in thick looping letters. "You don't belong here." The worst part? His family was home. His younger sister had come to visit for the weekend. She saw the intruder's silhouette through the hallway mirror. Just a shape. No face. She screamed. They fled. No one was hurt. But the message had landed. Loud and clear. Jordan filed a full report. Again. And this time, the city moved faster. A warrant was issued not just for Claire's home, but for her digital storage. And what they found there made everything fall apart. Buried in one of her cloud accounts, under a folder labeled HOA watch logs, were files with surveillance from inside people's homes. Footage hacked from Ring devices. Audio captured from baby monitors. Screenshots of family calendars synced from shared Wi-Fi networks. Claire had turned her obsession into full-blown criminal invasion. It wasn't just about parking spots. It was about domination. About knowing everything. And in the middle of the night, with legal teams scrambling and the neighborhood holding its breath, Claire vanished. Left a note taped to her front door. "I'm not the villain," it read. "I'm the only one who cared." And just like that, she was gone. But the vote? It still went on. And what happened at that vote changed the neighborhood forever. Chapter 6. The vote took place on a warm, dry Saturday morning. No wind, no clouds, no hint of trouble. Just a sense of expectation that hung over every doorstep like fog. People showed up in record numbers, young couples, retired veterans, moms pushing strollers, even the reclusive guy in Unit 11 who no one had seen since the lockdowns. They all came. The clubhouse parking lot overflowed. The meeting hall was standing room only. Jordan stood near the back, arms folded, not saying a word. He didn't have to. The truth had already spoken louder than anything he could say. One by one, ballots were passed out. You could feel the energy buzzing, hope, anger, anxiety. Everyone knew this wasn't just a procedural change. This was a battle between the kind of neighborhood people wanted to live in and the one they'd just escaped. A quiet hush fell over the room as the last ballot was dropped into the box. Then, Marcia, still acting interim president, read the results. 314 in favor. 29 opposed. The room erupted. Some clapped. Some cried. Some stood in stunned silence, unable to believe it actually happened. The reforms passed. The bylaws were officially rewritten. Claire's entire legacy? Erased in a single afternoon. We thought that was it. That it was finally over. We were wrong. Because just 20 minutes after the vote was called, something strange happened. A black sedan pulled up near the main gates. Not a city vehicle. Not one any of us recognized. A man in a dark blue suit stepped out, thin, tall, with eyes like steel. He flashed a badge. Federal. He asked to speak with Jordan privately. The two of them disappeared behind the clubhouse. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Then Jordan stepped back out, alone. His face was pale. He walked slowly back to the meeting and asked to speak. The room went quiet. "I just got word," he said. "Claire didn't run. She was taken." A gasp swept the room. Jordan nodded. She had dirt on more than justice. She had files linked to a wider surveillance network. Not just local. She'd tapped into security feeds from neighboring cities. Even a retired judge's house. He paused, scanning the room. The feds had been watching her for a while. They used our case as the final trigger to move in. But something went wrong. "What do you mean?" someone asked. Jordan looked down. They traced her to a storage unit 3 towns over. They found her phone. Her laptop. But not her. The place was burned. Dead silence. Marcia broke it. "You're saying she's missing?" "Gone," Jordan said. "No prints. No ID. Nothing left but her signature sunglasses." Nobody spoke for a while. Then Sam asked the question that was on everyone's mind. "So is it over?" Jordan didn't answer. Because right then, every phone in the room buzzed. At the same time. It was a mass email. From an address no one had seen before. Subject line: "You voted wrong." There was only one thing in the body of the message. A single photo. Taken from above. Of all of us, standing in the clubhouse. That very moment. The timestamp was from 2 minutes ago. Gasps turned to panic. People looked around the room, scanning for a camera. For a drone. For anything. Jordan ran outside. Nothing. The sky was clear. Trisha clutched her chest. "She's watching us. She's gone." Someone yelled. "This is a trick." But the fear was real. Because then came the second email. Just a subject line this time. "Did you think I wouldn't prepare?" Jordan's phone rang. Blocked number. He answered, voice firm. "Claire?" Silence. Then a voice. But it wasn't Claire. It was someone else. A man. "You took her down," he said. "But the work isn't over. She was only step 1. Who are you?" Jordan snapped. The voice laughed. "You live in a neighborhood. We live in a network." The call ended. Jordan stood frozen. His phone screen flickered. Battery full. Signal strong. No service. Then all our phones did the same. Every single phone in that room shut off at once. Black screens. Dead. People screamed. Kids cried. Sirens began to wail somewhere in the distance, but not from police cars. From houses. From doorbell cameras. From baby monitors. The network Claire built? It wasn't just hers. It had grown. Multiplied. Learned. And it was watching us. Still. Somewhere in the back of the clubhouse, a single printer hummed to life. It spit out one sheet. Jordan picked it up. On it were 6 words, HOA was only the beginning. And that was the moment we realized. We hadn't ended the nightmare. We unleashed it.